Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Good News. So things are starting to open back up on this for the summer, and we all need to get used to actually coexisting with other people. And so for this week's episode, we have a special guest, a member who's recently just come back from to the college, Rachel Valbrun. Welcome.
Hi.
And of course, we always have our good and handsome fellow in the background, Chiu Lee.
Hi.
So, Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. Perhaps you can give a little bit of an introduction to yourself for everybody who's watching tonight.
Well, hello. I am Rachel, as she's mentioned. I am probably a really old member. I first joined Good Enough in 2014. I left in 2016 to 2018, and I'm now hopefully wrapping up my time to finish my PhD by the end of this year.
Nice. And also, I guess in the time that you've spent in the college, also you started and currently continue to run the yoga club at the college, don't you?
Well, the yoga club existed when I joined, and at the time, I think it was run by someone by the name of Rebecca. She was also the librarian. And then something happened where the club stopped, and then someone by the name of Stephanie picked it up. And then Stephanie's actually one of the members who was really a major contribution to the college. But in 2017, she passed away. I think just probably before finishing her PhD and everything. Passed away here at the college. It was quite there's a tree planted for her in the quad, actually.
Oh,
and then from then, Marina, who left last year, took it over. And at the moment, it's really run mainly by Isabel Brain. She lives in Willie G. And I've been teaching classes, I guess, weekly up until COVID. But before then, Isabel actually has done a really good job. Like, there's a lot to do with the club. And it's been a pleasure to help her out and to just help run the club, but just to teach a class and prepare for classes and to get the club moving on a regular basis. 3 classes a week. It's quite. I mean, most of you, both of you know, and most people who've tried to run something here at the college, it can be quite an experience.
So. Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing as well, just because for me personally, even when I joined the college, you know, if before this you were used to kind of even trying to find a good studio to go to in London and paying like at least £12 a class to be able to just go downstairs and have a teacher there. And yeah, like a really good model as well, where if the class is quite full, you'll actually end up paying less. So it's kind of all about giving people what they need. It's a really cool model, actually.
Yeah. I quite like the model. The reason I started to teach here was because I know how expensive it is to get a yoga class in London. But I wanted to offer something that was completely free on the weekends. Because it was kind of something I enjoyed doing, and I felt like there are so many things offered here that are an extension to what we're here for, and that's academia. And I kind of wanted a little bit of a release from it, but also having been through times where when I needed yoga, I couldn't afford it, so I just felt like, or needed fitness, or just something to like take my time away. I wanted to make sure it was at no additional cost to members. So it's kind of. It's been quite fun because members who attend they bring more to it than I provide, so it's quite nice.
Yeah, and perhaps you can tell us a little bit as well in terms of how you started practicing yoga, how you first learned about it, came into it, and tried it until now you're actually someone who is also teaching.
It's quite funny how I started practicing. I grew up in South Florida, which is quite warm. My family's from Haiti, and so we like the heat. And I moved to Virginia, Charlottesville, Virginia. It's colder winters where there's snow, you know, and it was quite foreign to me, to the idea of cold. And someone, advised, oh, there's a hot yoga studio you should try. And I was like, no, I run. I don't do yoga. I run. You got to be mad. I'm not doing that. And I tried it, and it was the hottest place I could find, and that was that. I didn't like it. I had a really tough time, but it was warm. The room was hot, and I was very pleased by that. And it kind of stuck. I just, yeah, that was it. And it's been kind of, for a long time, it was touch and go. I would go, and then I would stop, and I would go. But now it's like, yeah, if I need to work out and I can't go for a run, like right now I'm pretty injured, so then it's usually by taking a yoga class. So.
Just to add a little plug, funnily enough, like it's really interesting to me that you say that you started with hot yoga, because that's how I started yoga as well. And I teach now as well, but I started when I was 19, and I just graduated from college. There was a studio in New York where I did my undergrad, and you could pay $10 for 30 days of hot yoga.
Oh, that is great.
And if you do 30 days straight every day, they'll give you another month for 50% off. And so that was how I started. I went for 30 days. It was also, and I don't know, in your case, it was also a very kind of uncertain part of time in my life, because I just graduated. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at the time. And just the certainty of knowing that, but I'm going to hot yoga every day, really, it really kind of got it going. And it's funny because it was also a Bikram studio, which now, of course, it's a very different world. Have come up about Bikram. And it was a very different kind of teaching yoga than what I embrace now. But that was how I started, and perhaps it's similar to you.
Yeah, that's exactly how I started. It was hot. There was this intro offer of $10 for 30 days. It's like, okay, sure thing. And then but also it was Bikram at the time, which also has all of these issues have come up about. But for me, it was kind of it was a good centering place in this time of transition, because me moving from South Florida to Virginia was a massive culture shock for me, because I had never really been in that part of America, which is incredibly different from how I had grown up. So it was really challenging for me, to grasp this different way of country that I identified with. So it was really phenomenal to have that there. So I was quite grateful for it. Since then, the way I've practiced has obviously changed. Now it's more vinyasa, or ashtanga or power yoga. But the class I teach here is yoga sculpt, which I think a lot of people see it as just not yoga, which is fine. But I really enjoy it because it brings in also a real big emphasis on music, which I picked up from Jiva Mukti, which I also like to practice. But there's emphasis on music, but also it brings in cardio and it brings in weight training. And I'm really happy about the cardio because I absolutely love running. In my first 2 years here, it was all about the run club. That's like the one thing I would do more than yoga. So I'm really happy to have found Yoga Sculpt and teach Yoga Sculpt, because it's a nice introduction to yoga, while at the same time, focusing on, there's this focus on, being conscious of your body and in safety, and recognizing that cardio, the benefits of cardio as well as strength training. So I quite enjoy it.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do your class, but you do it on Saturdays, and I have I have to go to school on Saturdays, so I can do it. But it's funny because even the people who perhaps don't know you or have never been to any of the yoga classes at Good Enough, they probably will be familiar with the posters that are kind of on the lobby of both Willie G and London House, right, with the image in the triangle pose and Yoga Sculpt. And that's really cool what you said about some of the different kind of aspects that you're bringing into the class, what do you hope your students will take away when they come to your class?
I think the first thing is just a comfort with your body, no matter what your body type or what your body is capable or what you think it's incapable of. Just this appreciation to have your body and this appreciation to use your breath to guide your body, and recognizing that connection with how your mind might feel is highly connected to how you treat your body and how it's guided by the breath. So I think that's probably the one thing that I really like to emphasize. It's kind of also why I like to encourage anyone to try. I get a lot of people will say, or they'll message me, the warnings on, or the email, it seems a little bit scary. The description seems a bit intense, or they're not strong enough, or they're not bendy enough, or I'm just like, no, just try it, and go at your own pace and enjoy it. It's really meant to have a good time, and to have fun, and to be safe, and there isn't this expectation to be able to touch your toes or anything of that.
Yeah.
So it's just like just come in and have a good time, and just I think having that compassion for ourselves as individuals highly affects how we look at and treat others. So I kind of wanted to focus on that, this fundamentals of just like who we are as individuals, and looking at that. So
yeah, because I don't know if you get the same, but a lot of the times when people like when I start talking to people about teaching yoga, one of the first few things they say is, "Oh, I'm so not flexible," and that's actually not at all what yoga is about, right? Yeah, like if you had a penny for every time somebody said that, you'd be rich, but you'd feel a piggy bank. Yeah. So I'm curious actually to hear about, like, for all the listeners out there perhaps who haven't had a chance to try going to a yoga class or to try a practice, what would you say to them? What would you inform them about the practice, and maybe why they might want to try it?
I would say it would be something to try because it's a different way. Like what you practice on the mat is something that helps you reflect about things off the mat. So it's not only about practicing or fitness or just learning to stretch or build muscle or having a nice body. It's about your mindset, and being figuring out who the person is that you want to be, and learning how to become that every day, in all aspects. So it is one thing on the mat, but it's also so much greater than that. And I would say, give it a chance, because there are many times that I've tried and I didn't like it. There were studios that I went in and I wanted to walk out. There were instructors that I did not have a good experience with. But I would say just give it a couple tries. Like I said, in my first experience, I didn't enjoy it at all, because I felt at the time I was not bent. But it's a practice. It's not something you perfect. It's something you constantly improve by practicing. So there's always room to grow. So I think try it. If one person doesn't, if the way somebody speaks doesn't sit with you, try something else. There's so many different types. And there's so many different ways of practicing yoga. Some is all about movement and body. Some are completely seated practices, where it's almost completely meditation, or figuring out which one works for you. That in itself can take some time. When I moved back to London in 2018, after I had done a couple trainings, I think 4 trainings, it took me about a year to find a studio that I wanted to maintain a practice at. It happened to be the same studio that I started at in 2014, but I still wanted to try others, and it takes time to try them. And obviously, if cost is a factor, there are places that offer it for really low price or for free. So it does take some work to figure it out, but I do recommend putting in that effort.
Yeah. What's your favorite place to practice in the world? Kind of like either in London or even back home? Because I know, I feel like it's not like a studio is not necessary to hold a practice, but when you do find like a community in a space that's just right, it does help a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does help so much. I think I have several, so I can go by cities. In London, I like going to Sangye's yoga school. It's in Notting Hill, or Nob Hill, or Notting Hill, Nob Hill, Notting Hill, Notting Hill. It's Ladbroke Grove area. I also like practicing, if I'm doing a self-practice, I love practicing in Mecklenburgh, in the garden. That's like without a mat, that's like hands and feet on the ground. That's amazing. I have Isabel to thank for advising that. And then if I'm in the States, I really enjoyed practicing at a studio in LA, where I was for a while. And I don't know if I could say it's for the studio, but the people who were there managing the studio made it an incredibly safe space. So I would have to say it's more so about the groups of people that were there that made it what it was. Because once they did move to another studio, I followed them. So it's I don't know if in Miami, I don't think I have I wasn't practicing as much in Miami. I was running more, so I couldn't say so much about it. But yeah, I really enjoy Sangye Studio here in London.
Amazing. And maybe we can leave the link down below as well so people can check it out. Because a lot of these studios, also, although they're not open, sometimes they stream classes and stuff like that.
They do stream. Sangye streams 2 classes a day.
Amazing.
And I do take at least 2 classes a week. So
nice. I need to start trying that as well. If I can add a little plug for myself, one of my favorite places to practice in the world is in Bali, because I'm Indonesian.
Oh yeah.
Like Jakarta and Singapore, so it was very close to go to Bali. And there's this place called the Yoga Barn that is literally like, it's not really a hotel, but they have dorms and some rooms, and they've got like a little restaurant and 2 studios, one indoors, one outdoors, and they just do all kinds of classes all day, like vinyasa classes. They'd even do kirtan classes where you sit there and sing, but it is you know what I mean. They do gong baths and all these, and you do it for 1.5 hours, 2-hour classes. And I'm not saying like a longer class is better. It's just you come in it with like a very different mindset, because you're not thinking about how much time you'll be there in. It also gives you time to kind of have the focus build up to kind of something different. And it's one of my favorite places in the world until now. And yeah, if anybody ever goes to Bali, I would recommend Yoga Barn. It's amazing.
Oh, I want to go. I want to go so bad. I want to go.
It's yeah. Text me if you ever end up in Bali. I will. Yeah. And it's interesting because I don't know about you, but for me, the first thing that comes to mind is not a teacher that like I love doing a class with, but a lot of the times it's like the space and the community, isn't it?
The community is everything, because you arrive and there are people that you just everything that you probably came in with, all the baggage that you come with, you just release with them. So that sense of community is everything. Like my closest friends from my time in away in the middle of the PhD are the friends that I made through yoga, and it just whenever there's like something going on, you just go and you that sense of like space, and just you it's one of those spaces where you get to be your real self completely, and it's such a release. So it and I mean, if the space is in Bali, then it makes it that much better. Sure.
I also love what you said earlier as well, this idea of like when you talked about how you first started practicing, you immediately also talked about like a specific stage in your life. You said when you moved to Virginia, and it was kind of a moment of change for you. And I'm really curious actually to hear about how you would say overall the journey of your practice has been in relation to your life, how like maybe at a different life stage you needed like a different kind of yoga practice, and leading until now, and what you're working on now, and what your practice looks like now to respond to that or to prepare yourself for that.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, obviously I've moved a lot. So there's always
You lived, because I know you've mentioned growing up in South Florida and then also Virginia, and you were in LA for some time, and now you're in London.
Yeah. So even in like just the time of the PhD, I moved to London from Miami. In the middle of the PhD, I moved from London to LA for 2 years, and then back to London now for about 2 years now. Before, like in between Miami and London, I lived in Virginia and New York. So I lived in New York for about 4 years, in Virginia 2 years. So just this constant movement. Usually my go-to for a very long time would be running, up until about 2016, 2017. My go-to was always running. I think the transition in the middle of the PhD, which came sudden and unexpected. I stumbled upon Yoga Sculpt. I had gone to the studio. There was a Trader Joe's, and Trader Joe's is, just I'll go as many times as I can. And across the street from the Trader Joe's, there was a studio offering, an intro offer of 1 free week. And I went in, and I guess I was too late for the yoga class I wanted to go to. And they're like, oh, we have this other class, Yoga Sculpt. And I was just like, what is that? It's like, oh, just try it out. And I go into this class. I absolutely did not enjoy it. The music was just going wild. There were weights involved. There was cardio. It's like, no, I want a simple vinyasa. I want to relax. And I just was like, what is this? And I was a bit frustrated. And I left. I went through the whole class, and then when I went home, I didn't use my free week, to be honest. Because I was just like sore for a week, so I just like, I don't need to go back. But then after that week, it was like I needed something, and I went back again, and I took a regular yoga class, like a vinyasa class, and I realized like I wanted again that same class where there was something energizing me at the same time, like keeping me balanced and also strengthening me to like help me get back to running. And so it just, that transition I like using this really high intense class, which mirrored kind of what my life was kind of feeling like, unexpected, sudden. It's this constant, like there's just this constant pulls, but at the same time, there are moments in the Yoga Sculpt class that are quite calming and centering in the beginning and the end. So I found that quite useful for some time since then, up until about COVID. In lockdown, I found myself doing a lot more vinyasa. I find myself wanting more vinyasa without music, without any props or anything. Just I find myself wanting to match the pace in which things were happening in, where I kind of needed to remove as many distractions as possible. So I really enjoyed over COVID, kind of in lockdown, kind of just having a practice that was it seemed slower, but still the intensity within the body or within the mind was more than enough was more than enough stimulation for me to work with. So, but my practice does definitely change as things go along. I still do Sculpt only because not only because I enjoy it. I think since the protests, I've been wanting to listen to certain types of music. But in those music, when listening to those types of music, I also want to move and flow, and I feel Sculpt kind of is more appropriate for them. So,
what kind of music is it?
It's a mix. It's a massive mix from your indie music to pop music to not a lot of I'm not really good with flowing with rap. Some people are great at it, and I'm not quite there. A lot of 50s and 60s soul music.
Nice.
Also, the music that I guess the music that I love the most is compa, which is Haitian music. So I've been listening to a lot of. I usually listen to a lot of that, but practicing with it there's a lot of drums and Afrobeat
Nice.
to it. So I quite enjoy that. Practicing to it.
That's really cool because I've also found that not everybody loves my yoga playlist. Some of them think it's just a mess. But I'm also someone who I like to do vinyasa to like the Grateful Dead,
See?
Allegra, Ben Harper, Patti Smith.
Yeah.
And some people like to listen to Ram Dass, and that's totally fine.
That's fine. Yeah. But sometimes you get into it and you're like, no, I get it. I completely get it.
That's really cool. It's funny, everything that you said actually reminds me of something not a yoga teacher said, but actually an acting teacher said, which is this idea of when you practice yoga, just like in life, there will be things you can do and can't do. You will feel pleasurable sometimes, you will feel angry sometimes, you'll feel frustrated sometimes. But when you do it in your practice, like both your hands are on the ground, both your feet are on the ground, and like you practice to deal with that emotion, that intensity. You practice it in the class, and then you can take it out into your life.
You practice to work with what is. What you have is what you work with.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's incredibly uncomfortable, and sometimes it's frustrating. I think one of the things I found really difficult. I grew up in a very religious family. My father is a minister, and there's for a long time I struggled with the idea of practicing yoga because I had this idea that the two don't mix, the worlds don't mix.
Yeah.
And I actually had an aunt when I was in Haiti at one point, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to go do some yoga. And she was like, oh, but isn't that voodoo? And I was just like, you can watch me and you can tell me if it is. And she looked at me, she's like, oh, you're breathing and moving. And I was just like, yeah, you could say that. And it was just, I've also heard, I've had comments come to me, that aren't the most pleasant in terms of how the two work, religion and something like yoga. Mm-hmm. And for me, I guess I'm kind of losing my track, but for me, it's just like that discomfort of, am I doing something wrong by practicing yoga, or am I doing something wrong by not, or like just figuring out that duality of like, well, depending on how one believes, I believe that if one believes in a God that kind of appreciates and loves all of us, no matter what. But actually, in practicing yoga, you get to a point where you're working with some of the most uncomfortable things in life, and uncomfortable emotions in life, and situations in life, in a way that you're kind of you're relying on all of these external things to come together within how you're dealing with them internally, and being okay with just that. Yeah. And learning that as you work through them, some things change and some things stay the same, but it's still okay. Like there isn't a bad with some things not turning out the way we want them to, if that makes sense, want them to be. Yeah. So I like, especially like, I think with religion, my family's kind of like, oh, you like now, like if there's a period in my life where I don't practice yoga for a while, my sister will be like, you seem a little bit off. Like, here's a pass to go practice yoga for a month. Like, you need to, like,
She knows by now.
I think there's this centering about it that kind of just, there's like, life can be very angst, or just like, it pulls you in so many different directions sometimes. And I feel like yoga, it's just kind of, or just some sort of practice kind of helps me just like be like, okay, well, it is what it is. There's things I can do with workout, and there are some things the one thing that needs to be worked out is my acceptance of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I kind of rambled there. Sorry about that.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people probably, it's funny, right? Because there's no way to really define what yoga is, because it's not like a religion, like the way the Catholic Church has the Vatican and you've got like a central body that decides what it is. There's no such thing for yoga. It really is. It's a practice that you adapt, that you make your own.
Yeah. You
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's a practice that you work out on your own. I mean, you mentioned kirtan and gong bath. Like I've only done kirtan once, and I don't think I haven't done a gong bath. I really like to. And there are people who just, that's what they do, you know. And I don't know if you want to describe what either of those are for.
Yeah, maybe actually, I like to tell this story to people, because I'm surprised not more people know about gong baths, because they're so amazing. I did one in Singapore where, and what I like about it as well is like it opens up what people think yoga is, because you could just sit on the mat and you are doing yoga. It's not at all about, it's not a workout at all. And there was this great place in Singapore I used to go to, where this woman was just amazing at creating the space, because the place would be pristine, and she'd burn some sage, and she'd get us to lie down, and she would play these gongs. So you would just be meditating. You could sit, you could lie down, and just having the sound of the gong like wash over you, and it would make your bones vibrate. And you would go on a trip, really. Like I went on a trip and just saw all these different things, and it was very scary at first, actually, because it's so strong, the sounds. And then when you're done, she kind of slowly leads you back into safety, and then she opens the windows, and it opens up to the canals in Singapore, and you hear kind of the sounds of the outside world. And it's just amazing how she built this journey. And yes, sometimes she marries that as well with actually, I don't know if it is called the kirtan is actually the name of the instrument, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like a tiny piano,
like an organ piano, like a tiny like organ type piano, like accordion type piano.
Yeah, and it's chanting basically, and they usually tell you what you're chanting, and I understand that also some people are not comfortable chanting things that maybe mention like Hanuman or Shiva and so forth. That's why personally also in my classes, when we do chant, I just do this one chant that's like Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu, because it just means wishing all beings in the world to be free and happy. And there's a lot less just a lot less kind of holding you back, because understandably people come in with different beliefs, and whatever your beliefs are, you can practice.
Yeah, no, it's totally. Speaking about chanting, I would say, I don't know, maybe 5-7 years, I was terrified of saying namaste. Because I didn't know what it meant. There was this bowing process, which growing up quite religious, one was taught not to bow down to anything. No one, you shouldn't bow down to any god other than God himself. And so when they would om 3 times at the end of class and then say namaste, I would stand up. I would sit there and be like, I can't do that part. I can't do that. I was terrified until I did training and I learned what these things mean. And I just thought, it's a saying of we see each other. We see, we recognize who we are individually together. And so it's just learning these things really did help in calming me down. But also just how we as individuals experience this journey. Those chanting, I'm still the studio I go to now, Sangye. It used to be the Jiva Mukti Center in London. It's now just it's an affiliate, and Jiva Mukti has a lot of chanting in it. At first, I wasn't so uncomfortable because it came out of a recommendation to go to the center for Miami. So I was like, okay, well, they do it here. But I didn't know what they were saying for a while. So I would always sit quietly and just be like, okay. And now they still chant, but there's always explanations of what's being chanted. And with Zoom, now that classes are in Zoom, they actually put the chants on the screen. So it's quite nice because you can go and research them afterwards, understand what's happening, what's being said, and what they mean. But it's also quite for me. It's amazing because growing up in one religion, actually, as I told you, I guess the other night, I went to a Jewish school as a child, and so you were always singing. You had to sing prayers in Hebrew. Are you there?
Sorry. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No.
So London House Wi-Fi always makes an appearance, at least
yeah.
Yes.
Well, London House Wi-Fi got to me so bad. I have a WAP in my room.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it happened to me during a supervisor meeting where it completely dropped off. Like,
Oh.
Anyways,
well, let's hope somebody in power is this episode. But yeah, I mean, I just completely understand everything you said, because it's funny, you've reminded me of like one of the times when I was in Bali, and at the time I was there with my mother and my sister, and my family is also very religious. I remember going to a kirtan class, like it was this forbidden thing. It's like a forbidden thing, because if they saw that I was like, because something about it does feel like worship at church, which also, by the way, is actually just in general, anytime a group of people sing together, it feels very sacred. Actually,
right.
That's how we are as humans. Yeah, so it's really interesting, right? It's all a journey.
Yeah, it's funny, but I also enjoy that, like there are so many similarities in them, and this care for the soul and this care for the being of ourselves and of others, which I really just, for me it's a growing process, because I'm the middle of 5, and when you're the middle of not so many but a few, you're kind of just like this, this extra. And so I'm also comfortable with completely being on my own and not worrying about everyone else, and sometimes not paying attention to the fact that being on your own means some people might feel neglected. And so this practice kind of makes me think, although I might enjoy solitude, although I might enjoy isolation, there are others who might not, and I shouldn't, just shut them out when they reach out. And I shouldn't wait. They shouldn't have to wait for them to reach out before I reach out to them. It should just, although I enjoy this, part of being that person of compassion, that person who appreciates, life as is, or just being. It is my duty to also reach out and be like, hey, how's it going? Are you okay?
Yeah.
I am definitely failing in this area, I must admit. I think my family is like, are you alive? So even friends at the college are constantly like, should we stop by? Should we check on you? We know you're writing, but are you okay? So it's something I definitely need to work on. But it's just a habit that I kind of need to break, because growing up, I was always kind of just in the corner, quietly, happily not being bothered. This joke that my dad likes to say, people are like, oh, she's so quiet. I'm like, okay, just leave her that way and she'll stay that way. So I need to kind of work on it still.
I see. Well, yeah, there's in every aspect, there are things we need to embrace and that we need to work on. So we before we end, I do want to do a few rounds of rapid fire questions. So rapid fire questions, essentially, I ask it. There are no wrong answers. And you just kind of say whatever's at the top of your head. Now, I've realized this question of favorite gets very existential and very complicated, right? Because our favorite. So with everything, I'm going to ask you, what is your choice at the moment? So, for example, your beverage of choice, right? So it's whatever kind of like floats your boat at the minute, but like everything, it's always changing, right? So rapid fire questions. Coffee order of choice.
Does matcha count?
Totally, matcha. Delicious. Yoga pose of choice.
Yeah. Yoga pose of choice. Headstand.
Study spot of choice.
Oh dear. I would have to say it's usually Willie G Library,
which is opening back up next week or this week when this episode comes out.
Cocktail orders.
Cocktail order, Old Cuban. If you haven't had an Old Cuban with Prosecco, you have to have an Old Cuban.
Oh, that sounds delicious. What's in an Old Cuban?
Well, there's rum, there's Prosecco, there's bitters, a little bit of mint. I'm forgetting one thing. There's another liqueur that's in it. It's my drink of choice. It's been a while, and I'm like, oof.
Nice.
Great.
What about music recommendation?
I really like compa music, which is Haitian music. It's Haitian. I get not quite pop, but it's kind of like the Haitian kind of version. Some say the dance to it is merengue, but compa would be my.
Nice. Movie recommendation?
Oh, it's been a while. I haven't watched many movies, I have to admit. Heidi is my favorite.
Nice. And on that note, thank you so much, Rachel, for joining us. This has been amazing and so insightful, especially for anybody who's curious to hear more about yoga and what their practice means to them. Thank you.
Yay, thank you. It's been great.